Okay, let's unpack this. The dream, right? Escaping the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Ditching that feeling of just being a number, breaking free from that unfair exchange. They talk about trading most of your waking hours for, well, a wage.
There's this huge pull towards freedom, isn't there?
Yeah.
Purpose, building something for yourself.
Exactly, on your own terms. But man, actually figuring out how to make that leap, how to quit your job and build a thriving online business.
It's overwhelming.
Totally. The sheer volume of conflicting information out there is just, wow.
It really is. You see the highlight reels online,
Yeah.
the flashy promises, but rarely the reality of what it genuinely takes.
Right.
What's fascinating here is we've got some sources that, well, they promise to cut right through that noise.
Yeah.
Give you the unvarnished truth.
Yeah, that's what we're doing today. A deep dive into precisely that journey. We're pulling insights from a couple of key places. One's a podcast intro that really sets the stage, kind of mindset meets money. And the other is this comprehensive tutorial. Promises a real blueprint, but crucially, a solid dose of reality about the whole entrepreneurial path.
Right, the reality check. So
Yeah.
our mission here is to extract the most actionable and hopefully maybe surprising nuggets from this stuff.
Yeah.
We want to give you a crystal clear picture, the commitment needed, the actual steps involved, and the mindset you got to have to make this leap successfully.
Ultimately, helping you understand what this all means for you if you're currently considering this. Well, it's a challenging path, right?
Yeah.
But potentially really rewarding.
Definitely rewarding.
So let's jump right into that reality check because, like you said, the sources aren't pulling any punches about the common misconceptions.
No, they definitely aren't. They start by directly addressing the clickbait culture. The stuff that really glamorizes entrepreneurship online. It's everywhere.
You absolutely do see it everywhere. And one of the very first things the tutorial source insists on is that making significant money, like say hitting 10,000 pounds a month, it is absolutely not easy or simple.
Not at all.
It's not some quick fix.
Far from it. They describe it as hard work, requires serious consistency, real effort. The goal, both for us here and the material itself, is to provide real information, a blueprint for how you can actually replace your income and build something sustainable, a full-time online business.
And a critical point they make is that this is possible even if you currently have a busy life. They get the constraints.
Yes, and this is where that personal story, the anecdote from the tutorial source, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
They share their own journey, escaping a traditional 9 to 5, describing themselves as feeling like a slave to the system, hating that feeling of having to ask permission for time off,
Yeah.
feeling zero control over their time, their life, that feeling of eventually firing the boss.
Yeah.
They make it clear. That's incredible, worth the effort.
And they really stress that this path, it's genuinely accessible to anyone. It's not just for the rich or the lucky or, people with connections already.
Right. The source explicitly mentions their own background, non-academic. No college, no university, no family history of business, no rich contacts or leg up, as they put it.
Wow.
Their success, they emphasize, was purely self-driven, built on self-belief, self-education, fueled by a big reason why, and importantly, a clear consequence if they didn't succeed.
That links directly to the current workplace reality they talk about, doesn't it? That unfair exchange of time.
Exactly. Working 5 days just to get 2 off. Or, put more starkly, they say an average of 333 days a year just to get maybe 28 days of vacation.
Oof. When you frame it like that, it really shifts your perspective on the cost of a standard job.
It really does, and it raises a big question. The source also brings up a pretty shocking statistic from Gallup research, apparently. 77% of adults worldwide dislike their jobs.
77%, that's staggering.
Think about that. Over 2.6 billion people potentially unhappy in their current work.
And the difficult truth they mention is that in most corporate settings, you are essentially just a number. Almost everyone is replaceable.
Accepting that reality, they say it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's key. Key to shifting your focus, putting yourself first.
Right.
This also flips the common idea of risk. The source argues it's actually far riskier long-term to stay in a job where you're unhappy, replaceable, with no control, than it is to try building something yourself, even with all the upfront uncertainty.
Okay, so that risk perception flip is huge. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. If we're talking about building something for yourself, the sources are clear. The very first thing you need to work on isn't the business idea. It's not the money.
Right. They are absolutely firm on this. The biggest change you need to make before anything else is in your mindset, your core belief system. You have to change you first.
And a massive part of that, they say, is having a bigger reason why than just, well, desperation for money.
Yeah, money might get you started, maybe,
Yeah,
but it won't be enough to push you through the tough times, the challenges that will come up.
definitely.
Your deeper purpose, that meaningful reason,
Yeah.
that's what truly gets you back up when you inevitably get knocked down.
Self-belief comes up again and again as like one of the single biggest barriers. Imposter syndrome, all that stuff.
For sure. And that old, tired narrative business is too risky, 90% fail. The source directly counters that. They state that for online businesses, especially ones built while still working, the failure rate in the first 2 years is actually around 18.4%.
Wait, hold on. 18.4% compared to the 90% figure everyone throws around.
Huge difference, right?
That's massive. Why is it so much lower, according to them?
Well, they suggest it's partly because you're starting lean. You're not taking on huge upfront debt like, say, a traditional brick-and-mortar business often does.
Yeah.
That dramatically changes the risk profile, especially in those crucial early years.
Makes sense. You're not betting the farm right away.
Exactly. And this raises a really important question. How do you even begin to change that ingrained belief system? Especially if you've been in a job for ages. The source emphasizes that everything is downstream from your environment. If you're surrounded by negative people, unambitious people, you're likely going to end up like them.
Ouch.
As they provocatively state, you are often the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
That hits hard. And that WhatsApp exercise they suggest sounds, well, uncomfortable, but revealing.
Yeah, looking at your contacts, how many are truly driven, ambitious, building things, supportive, growth-oriented, versus how many are just talking about mind-numbing stuff, as they call it.
It forces you to look honestly at your daily environment, the conversations you're having.
And the conclusion from the source is definitive. To escape the employee mindset, which they describe as having a very real limited ceiling, your belief system, your environment, and crucially your social circle must change. You need to be around people who are either actively escaping or have already done it. People building successful lives.
So what are the core traits the source says you absolutely need to cultivate to make this shift work?
Okay, they list several key ones. First, self-belief. You got to ignore the naysayers telling you to play it safe. Second, sticking resolutely to plan A. Burning the boats, they call it. No plan B mentally draining your focus.
Okay.
Third, focus. They use the acronym FOCUS. Finish one course until successful, meaning see one thing through before chasing the next shiny thing.
Avoid the shiny penny syndrome again.
Exactly. Fourth, consistency. Showing up daily, doing the work, even when results aren't immediate. Fifth, discipline. Doing what most people just can't or won't do.
Right.
And sixth, patience. This directly counters our instant gratification culture. Escaping your job, building something sustainable, which is typically a 1 to 3 year journey, maybe even 5, though they say with the right support and strategy, it can be faster.
That long-term view is so critical, isn't it? Cuts through all that get-rich-quick hype.
Absolutely vital.
Yeah.
And finally, resilience. Bouncing back quickly from rejection, setbacks, hard times. Understanding is part of the process, not a personal failure. The entrepreneur, at their core, is a full-time problem solver.
And there's a real consequence to just waiting, right? They point out that humans often only act when it's almost too late, when the pain of staying finally outweighs the fear of leaving.
Yeah, exactly. And they reference that Tim Grover quote. It really drives it home. If you think the price of winning is too high, wait until you get the bill from regret.
Wow. Powerful.
It is. Finally, for this whole mindset section, the source recommends 2 books they found impactful. The Power of Purpose by Les Brown and The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Okay, deep breath. So getting your mindset right, that's the essential foundation. Once that's, in progress, how do we actually figure out what kind of online business to build that feels like the huge next step?
It does, yeah. And this section of the sources explores the really exciting possibility that, well, almost anything can potentially be a viable business model now.
Really? Anything?
Pretty much. Often with minimal or even zero startup costs, frequently requiring no specific qualifications, and buildable right from your home, your laptop.
That accessibility is key, especially if you're starting while still holding down a job. But they caution strongly against that shiny penny syndrome from social media ads.
Definitely. If something sounds too good to be true in the world of online business and money, the source says 99% of the time, it probably is. You have to trust your gut. Don't pick a model just because it's being aggressively marketed as easy money.
Okay, so if not the shiny penny, where should you start? The source suggests beginning Practically. With your strengths, your interests.
Right. Figure out what you're naturally interested in, what you're good at, what you've maybe spent years learning or doing. And crucially, is there demand for it? Does it add value to others?
So leverage what you already have.
Exactly. If you've been actively involved in a hobby or passion, or gained significant knowledge in something for, say, more than 5 years, they consider that a transferable skill set, something you can package and market. It's also about using the resources you already have available.
I like that. Starting with what, not trying to become someone else overnight. Then they talk about active research and reverse engineering. What's that about?
Yeah, this is presented as a really powerful technique. You find successful online businesses or maybe personal brands that you genuinely like or admire in your area of interest.
Okay.
And you reverse engineer them, everything about them. You kind of strip them apart, look at their websites, their links, how often they post, where their links go, sign up for their emails, attend their free webinars, maybe even hop on a sales call if you can.
So you're looking at it like a detective, not just a customer.
Precisely. From a business perspective, figuring out how they're actually achieving success, generating sales.
Find a working blueprint that's already proven, and then put your own unique spin on it. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. And critically, they stress you must test your ideas. Get market feedback as early as possible. You never build a business just because you like the idea. You build what the market actually wants and needs. Got to be genuine supply and demand.
The source also includes some really key self-assessment questions, right? To help you evaluate a potential business model.
Yeah, things like, is it online? Is it physical or digital? Can you realistically run it just from a laptop or phone, from anywhere? Global audience potential, can you use social media effectively? How does it hold up in a pandemic or recession? Could you eventually build a program or something scalable from it?
Those are great filtering questions, and they heavily emphasize adopting a lean business model concept.
Yes, definitely. Meaning low cost to start, efficient operations, agile, nimble. This is absolutely vital when you're trying to escape a job and build on the side. You need to be incredibly mindful about not over-leveraging yourself financially.
Right.
And be prepared to live frugally. They use this phrase, living like a POA, typically for 1 to 3 years while you build momentum.
Living like a POA. Okay, let's unpack that a bit. What does that really mean in practice? Is it just being cheap?
It's a strong term. Yeah, maybe pauper is what they mean. But it's about extreme frugality for a set period, doing a full, honest financial evaluation. Every pound or dollar coming in versus every single one going out.
Okay.
Then ruthlessly cutting out unnecessary expenses, daily coffee shop visits, eating out, unused subscriptions, impulse buys, avoiding materialistic purchases. They frame this discipline with money as a major advantage in those early years.
So it's like survival mode, maximizing every penny saved to fuel the escape plan?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It contrasts sharply with that instant wealth image you see online. And the source is very clear. Avoid businesses that demand significant upfront capital before you've even validated the idea or made any sales. They've seen too many people get stuck there.
So don't go into debt before you even know if it works.
Exactly. The realistic timeline they present is a solid and hard graft of 18 months, as a minimum, potentially, to escape your job, living frugally, cash stacking. And there are no guarantees in that time frame. Hard times will come. Unexpected challenges will arise. It's really a test of whether you can deal with the stress, the pressure, the uncertainty.
The source also briefly touches on the business structure side, like sole trader versus limited company. They mention their white paper goes into more detail.
Correct. They advise sticking with sole trader initially until you're consistently turning over a higher amount, maybe 50K to 100 K annually. Then look at limited.
And they have some quick practical tips here too, right? Like trademarks and domains.
Yeah, small but important things. Trademarking your brand name, your logo, purchasing all relevant domain names, .co.uk, .com, etc. straight away. Looks professional, protects your brand, even just organizing your phone into business-related folders. Small shifts to act like a business owner.
Makes sense. They also address business partners directly. Sounds like they're cautious.
Very cautious. Strongly advise against it if you see it as a cheat sheet or an easy way out, because it's hard. Partnerships can go horribly wrong if people aren't equally committed, or if skills don't truly complement each other.
But it can work.
It can, they say. If both partners are genuinely equally driven, same goal, pull their weight consistently, and their strengths cover each other's weaknesses, then it can work wonders. Effectively halve the workload, double the brain power. but that alignment is key.
Okay, balanced advice. The source also gives concrete business ideas and breaks down some simple earnings examples, which I found helpful.
Yeah, they list common online models, digital products, coaching, freelance work like writing or design, memberships, video editing, content creation, stuff like that. And they provide simple math, like selling a 30-pound digital product X times a week or doing 5 80-pound freelance jobs, showing how that could realistically replace an average salary. It makes it tangible.
Breaks it down into actual sales or clients needed. They even mention sales being a numbers game, right? With a rough conversion funnel estimate.
Yeah, like maybe one sale from 5 appointments, from 10 leads, from 10 prospects becoming aware. Just giving a feel for the process. And for reassurance, they showcase examples of their own members who successfully did this, replaced their income, and are now full-time online.
That's encouraging. For this section on finding your model, the source recommends 12 Months to 1 Million by Ryan Daniel Moran and Built to Sell by John Wadrow.
Now, building on finding your model, the source is absolutely adamant. The absolute best way to validate any business model is by getting sales.
Sounds obvious maybe, but I guess it's the real world proof. People actually willing to pay.
Exactly. Theory is nice, sales are validation. They recommend creating a launch plan, building a waiting list, and crucially, making sure your service or product isn't presented as just always available, unlimited.
Create some urgency.
Right. Avoid that, oh, I'll buy it next week thing that never happens. Making something too readily available can actually lower its perceived value.
Makes sense.
And the source stresses repeatedly throughout this whole journey. Escaping the 9-to-5, building a business. It's sheer grit, willpower, being tired, making significant sacrifices.
Like what kind of sacrifices?
Early mornings before your job, late nights after work, dedicating weekends, holidays. It counters that whole meditate and money rolls in pipe dream we talked about.
Definitely not that.
No, it's described as boots on the ground, doing the sometimes unglamorous dirty work yourself, especially at the start. They acknowledge this phase is tough, first 1 to 5 years maybe, depending on your pace, but they strongly emphasize it does get better.
How so?
You get more experience, you learn to work smarter, you gain more autonomy, and eventually you can leverage things like automation.
They also list components of a solid business roadmap you should put together, like an executive summary.
Yeah, so you can pitch it quickly, a marketing plan, how people find you, SWOT analysis, understanding your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, financials, obviously, and a timeline for it all.
Having that structure keeps you on track.
Definitely. And they emphasize continually evolving, constantly listening to the market, tracking and measuring your progress with data, being willing to adjust your strategy. Businesses that innovate, listen, learn, adapt, manage money, solve problems, embrace AI, those are the ones that survive and thrive.
And finally, for validating and navigating these early stages, they strongly recommend getting a mentor or joining a mastermind.
Absolutely crucial, they say. Avoid costly mistakes, get direct guidance from people who've been there, done that, and have a place to turn when you hit those inevitable tough spots.
Book recommendations here included Alex Hormozi's 100 Million Leads and 100 Million Offers and Main Street Millionaire by Cody Sanchez.
Right.
All right, so mindset, check. Finding the model, check. Now, a massive part of actually making sales and building trust online today involves something that might make some people quite uncomfortable.
You mean that quite punchy statement from the source about building a personal brand?
Yes. They say, and this is where it gets really interesting, to compete and truly gain trust in this hyper-competitive market, you almost have to become publicly, famously, socially known.
Wow, that's direct.
It is, to gain the trust needed for people to actually buy from you.
They are very direct about this. They argue you'll struggle trying to run a purely online business as just a faceless logo when competitors in your niche are willing to get their face on camera, share their story, drive traffic through their personal brand. That faceless business, they argue, will likely struggle, get overtaken.
So why is a personal brand so essential today, according to these sources?
They list several compelling reasons. It's much easier to build trust and credibility when people connect with a real person. Easier to validate ideas, get feedback, opens doors working with brands, sponsors, getting on podcasts, allows you to be authentic, transparent, relatable, humanizes your business, makes it easier to convert viewers into customers. Fundamentally, they say, a personal brand is one of the most powerful ways to drive traffic.
They describe this using the concept of 360 touch points.
Yeah, imagine your name or face at the center, arrows pointing out to all your online presences, social media, website, podcast, maybe books. all interlinked.
Okay.
People come into your social ecosystem, as they call it, and find multiple ways to check you out, validate you across different platforms. The source suggests people might see your stuff up to 7 times before even seriously considering buying.
That makes complete sense. In this age of skepticism, we definitely check people out across multiple places before buying anything.
Exactly. And they provide a formula they see for social media conversion, starting with a personal brand. A compelling hook plus solution leads to retention. People stick around.
Right.
Which leads to validation. They trust you. Plus a call to action, resulting in engagement. They interact, which can lead to virality, content spreads, then authority, you recognize, and finally, conversion. They buy.
And consistency is key here. Volume and quality.
Absolutely crucial. This really highlights a shift. Customers are increasingly buying the personal brand they connect with, sometimes before they even fully understand the back-end business offering.
So the person comes first, then the product.
Often, yeah. The customer journey, as they describe it.
Yeah.
Awareness through your personal brand content, validation via touchpoints, engagement via CTAs. Maybe you offer a freebie, lead magnet, to collect data.
Get their email.
Right. Invite them into a community, provide genuine value there, then eventually maybe a sales call or webinar or sales page for the paid product or service. It all stems from that authentic personal brand content.
The sources use powerful metaphors here. Content is currency, attention, the biggest asset online.
You need to focus relentlessly on delivering value information. They talk about creating push and pull content stuff that triggers a reaction, agreement, or disagreement. Helps you understand your audience.
And don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah, strong advice there. Share your opinions. As they bluntly put it, no one listens to boring.
True. And here's another fascinating insight. Monetization through the personal brand itself, separate from your main business, can potentially earn more initially.
That's right. Things like ad revenue from platforms, sponsorships, brand deals, speaking gigs, paid communities built around your brand. These can range from hundreds to 6 figures per deal, apparently.
Oh.
But the really big money often comes from leveraging that trusted brand and large audience to drive massive, qualified traffic to your actual back-end business offerings, significantly boosting those sales.
The source gives concrete examples of successful friends, collaborators, 6, 7, even 8-figure businesses, all built on strong personal brands.
Yeah, they list names like Ali Abdul, Simon Squibb, Alex Hormozy, Rob Moore, others. Highlighting their business success is intrinsically tied to the credible, recognized personal brands they've built.
They also break down how different platforms fit into this brand strategy.
As they see it, yeah. TikTok, great for virality, quick income ops, attracting new audiences. They share their own impressive stats. 60-10K revenue, 300 million organic views in 25 months from TikTok alone.
Incredible.
YouTube, considered the mothership for deep influence, credibility, trust through long-form content. Excellent for business building, conversion. Instagram, primarily for validation, social proof. LinkedIn, key for B2B networking, corporate connections. And Facebook, great for building dedicated communities.
The main message seems to be treat your social media and personal brand as a business.
Totally. It has analytics to track, strategies for growth, and as your following grows, there's almost an obligation to keep showing up consistently, delivering value. They're your potential customers.
Quick practical tips here.
Yep.
Professional photo, Linktree, or similar tool. Secure all your social handles consistently. Clear bio explaining who you are and the problem you solve.
Yep, foundational stuff. Book recommendations for branding, Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson, Crushing It in 12 and a Half by Gary Vaynerchuk, and Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. What about the incredibly challenging reality of trying to juggle building this online thing while you're still stuck in the 9-to-5? This is where most people start, right? It's a massive hurdle.
It absolutely is. And the source tackles this head-on, provides some quite provocative workplace strategies they use themselves, which they admit caused viral reactions, triggered some negative responses.
Like last one in, first one out, quietly quit, act your wage, walk slow. Those sound designed to provoke.
They do. But the source explains the logic isn't about being lazy. It's about reclaiming and protecting your limited time and energy for your actual escape plan.
Okay. So last one in, first one out just means
Arriving exactly when required, leaving exactly when allowed. Maximize hours for your business or family. Quietly quit means mentally checking out just enough to do your job, but not going above and beyond, not getting emotionally invested in the system you're leaving. Act your wage reinforces staying within your duties for your pay, not doing extra for free. And walk slow Means not being the default yes man. Not finishing tasks so fast you create excessive expectations.
It's about setting boundaries, directing your precious time and energy towards your ultimate goal, the escape route.
Exactly. And here's some incredibly direct, crucial advice from the source on this. Never trust your coworkers with your business plans.
Wow, that's a firm warning. Why so strong?
The source explains coworkers are mostly in a situational relationship with you. You're there together to earn a wage, not necessarily true friends. They might, inadvertently or even intentionally, jeopardize your plans to management. And maybe more subtly, some people feeling trapped might subconsciously or overtly not want to see you succeed in escaping. It challenges their own choices. It's potentially dog-eat-dog, they say, compared to the collaborative vibe you should seek in entrepreneurial circles.
They also strongly advise against accepting promotions or step-up roles in your current job.
Right. Seen as counterproductive.
Yeah.
Deepens your investment, attachment, responsibility in a system you're trying to leave. Don't get lured by the ego boost of a title or too comfy with the slavery wage, as they provocatively call it.
And avoid workplace politics and these workplace lifers who might drag you down.
Yeah, apply self-mastery, they say. Avoid getting sucked into others' drama or negative talk. Your focus needs to be laser sharp on your escape. Those things are just distractions.
The source reiterates the timeline here. Getting out in 12 to 36 months is possible if you're disciplined. Dedicate every available hour. Before work, after work, breaks, commute time for audio learning.
And they introduced the ESCAPE acronym as a framework for this phase. E for education, S for social, right, circle. C for communication, how you present yourself. A for attraction, coming across well, no ego. P for performance, higher level in your business building. And E for earn, learning to earn online.
Practical tips include using scheduling apps for social media posts so you're not doing it at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Avoid potential issues there. And there's some particularly bold advice for those who've maybe already spilled the beans at their current job.
Oh, what's that?
If coworkers or management already know about your business efforts and it's creating a difficult environment, the source suggests it might be best to quietly quit that job and find another low-stress one. Something like warehouse work, night shifts. Just covers the bills with minimal mental drain.
Wow, quit your job to get another less demanding job.
Yeah, radical. But the logic is it allows you to start fresh somewhere no one knows your plans. Focus entirely on building your business, flexing freedom over job status.
A bold move. But I can see the logic if your current place is actively hindering you.
Book recommendations for this section. I Know What to Do, So Why Don't I Do It? By Dr. Nick Hall and The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber.
All right, let's talk money. Financial preparation. Absolutely critical. Maybe one of the most practical steps before you even think about making the leap.
It truly is the foundation for a successful escape. The source revisits that issue people trying to look rich online versus actually being smart, disciplined with their money.
Right.
The core fundamental advice here, learn to live frugally. That phrase again, living like a POA, typically 1 to 3 years, to cash stack. Build up significant savings.
So living like a POA isn't just cutting back a bit, it's a deliberate, disciplined period of intense saving.
Exactly. Full financial evaluation, income versus outgoings.
Right.
Ruthlessly cut unnecessary expenses. Daily meal deals, unused subscriptions, impulse buys, materialism. This discipline with money is presented as a major advantage, a necessary sacrifice.
And a core piece of advice they stress, pay yourself first into savings, before bills or anything else.
Absolutely non-negotiable, they say. Then the source outlines 4 essential funds they recommend you build, specific minimum targets before you even consider quitting.
4 specific funds. Okay, tell us about them.
First, an emergency fund, covering no less than 6 to 12 months of your full household outgoings. This is the absolute buffer. Designed specifically to ride hard times when business income might be sporadic, which it will be initially.
Okay, 6 to 12 months of all expenses. That requires serious, sustained saving. Discipline.
It does. Second, a maintenance fund, targeting around £2,000 or $2,500. This is for those miscellaneous repairs, unexpected costs that inevitably pop up, washing machine breaks, new tires, car repair.
Right, stuff happens.
You don't want those hitting your crucial emergency fund.
Got it. Covers those unexpected annoyances. What's the third fund?
A floating fund, covering 1 month of your current salaried income. Minimum target £1,500 or $1,800. Purpose here. If you quit slightly too soon or have a dip right after quitting, you have a month's buffer. Breathing room before tapping the big emergency fund.
That's a smart, immediate buffer. And the fourth essential fund?
A growth or marketing fund for your business. Minimum £500 or $700, $800. To have readily available for initial ads, essential tools, software you might need to start getting sales.
Okay, so adding those targets up, the source recommends a total minimum across these 4 funds of at least £10,000 or maybe $12,000, $13,000 saved up before you quit.
Yes, this directly counters those unrealistic quick money promises. Provides a practical, realistic financial cushion. Survive the inevitable ups and downs, the zero-income months of early entrepreneurship. The source is crystal clear. Do not quit until you have this buffer or you have enough consistent paying clients to replace your income, one or the other, ideally both.
This really highlights how crucial disciplined financial management is through this whole prep phase. And connecting this back, the source mentioned they even provide a free resource on setting up a banking structure for this.
That's right. The tutorial source specifically mentions offering a free, detailed personal banking structure and setup video resource. Practical, step-by-step guidance on organizing your finances effectively during this build phase. They mentioned looking for details within their content on how to access it. Directly addresses your practical needs for managing money.
Got it. That's a super valuable practical tool to look out for then. Book recommendations for this financial section focus on wealth building and knowledge, specifically mentioning two by Andrew Craig, How to Own the World, and its update, Live on Less, Invest the Rest.
Okay, moving on. One of the absolute biggest challenges people face, right? Building a business, working full-time, maybe raising a family, just finding and managing the time.
Yeah, the default feeling is there just isn't enough time. How do they suggest you find it?
The source acknowledges it's incredibly tough, but insists it's absolutely possible through effective management, prioritization.
Management, okay. Not just finding more hours somehow.
Right. The core principle is learning to truly value your time. They use that provocative death clock analogy again. Imagining a clock on your wrist ticking down your remaining hours on Earth brings urgency, perspective.
Stark image, but effective, highlights time's finite value.
Their point is simple, but powerful. You can only spend time. You can't buy it back, can't truly invest it to get more, so you have to be incredibly wise about where every hour goes.
And they introduce the return on time invested metric, ROTI.
Yeah, ROTI, it's a mental filter. Before you commit to any activity, consciously ask, does this genuinely support my journey? Speed up the process, align with my values. If it doesn't have a high RTI, you simply don't do it.
That helps filter out endless distractions, low-value tasks. So how do you avoid that feeling of procrastination or being completely overwhelmed with everything you should be doing?
Through smart, consistent planning. The source shares their own simple, low-tech method, just pen and A4 paper. First, list priorities and secondaries for the next day. Then use a grid, 15-minute time slots, plan out the entire day in detail the night before.
Just simple pen and paper, not some complex app.
Right. Simplicity is key, they argue. This method, the 15-minute slots, forces accountability. Value every block of time more efficiently. Planning your days the night before is non-negotiable, they say.
And they challenge the no time excuse directly.
Yeah. Pointing out, like we discussed, many who say they have no time still spend hours doom scrolling or watching Netflix. You do have time if you're willing to sacrifice those low ROTI activities.
That doom scrolling statistic was genuinely shocking. 3 hours a day on average. 45 full days a year lost. Redirecting even a fraction of that. Massive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Becoming more productive, they argue, is less about doing more about being less distracted by things that don't matter. The source suggests creating a productivity bubble. Limit your focus to essentials. Home, health gym, work business building. Even physically minimize unnecessary movement. Logistically move less to save time, energy.
And a core rule they seem to live by. Never consume, only create.
Yes. Their perspective. Social media in this phase is primarily for marketing, building your brand, not for idle scrolling or consuming. They quote Jason Greystone. If you're in business, be in business. Your limited time must focus on building, not passively consuming.
This all sounds like a potentially very intense, maybe even lonely path, though. Where does support and collaboration fit in?
This leads to the absolute critical importance of networking. The source stresses that, saying, it's not what you know, it's truly who you know, and your network is your net worth. Building the right connections is key for benefit and emotional support.
You need to switch from an employee mindset to an employer mindset. Have growth conversations.
Yes, great analogy they use. Want to be a faster runner. Train against faster athletes, not slower ones. You need to actively seek out. Be around people operating at the level you aspire to. Never be the smartest person in the room if your goal is growth.
How do you actually find these people?
Tangible steps suggested. Attend events, marketing, entrepreneurship, business seminars, TED Talks. Importantly, go alone initially. Force yourself out of your comfort zone to network. Online communities, masterminds. Vital options too.
And when things inevitably get tough, as they will, you absolutely must ask for help.
It's non-negotiable. Entrepreneurship can be incredibly lonely, especially after leaving a job's built-in social structure. You won't have all the answers. You will hit roadblocks. You need to turn to your network, your community for guidance, support, without pride getting in the way.
Right.
Getting help is key. Navigate hurdles, find solutions, prove naysayers wrong, relight your fire when struggling. Joining a mastermind or community is presented as immensely valuable for that support structure.
And this leads to a tough but necessary step they're very direct about, cutting off negative or toxic people, even friends or family.
The source is blunt here, calls them deadweight. It says you must cut them off immediately, not gradually, because they will hold you back, subtly or overtly. You'll regret not doing it sooner.
Oh.
They use the analogy, trying to go fast in a two-seater sports car versus being on a bus with 60 passengers holding you back. Achieving high levels often means your immediate social circle shrinks dramatically. But they argue it's almost always for the better. Make space for more aligned connections.
Book recommendations for this section on grind, time, support. The Decision by Kevin Hart and You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Interesting, these were also recommended for mindset earlier.
That similarity, I think, just reinforces how fundamentally intertwined mindset, discipline, resilience, overcoming challenges are throughout the whole journey.
Okay, looking towards the future then. How do you take this foundation you've built and actually scale an online business? What does that next level look like?
The source paints a genuinely exciting picture here. Scaling online businesses to 6, 7, even 8 figures with surprisingly minimal staff, maybe 1 to 3 people, potentially even just one person running a 7-figure operation, thanks to AI and automation.
That's a huge shift compared to traditional large teams needed for that scale.
Absolutely. It means you need to think early about building tools, processes for data collection, outreach, workflow automation, using platforms like Zapier to connect software. CRM systems, customer relationship management, and email tools like MailChimp, HubSpot become essential. Managing, communicating with a growing audience.
Right.
Scheduling apps like Calendly streamline appointments. Linktree funnels people efficiently from social bios. And a key rule: if you find yourself repeating a task more than once, create a process or template. Save time, allow for automation or outsourcing later.
They even recommend Wix as a good starting all-in-one platform, mentioning its built-in CRM and automation.
Yes, helpful early on. In terms of outsourcing, the advice is strategic. Outsource your weaknesses as budget allows. First 2 roles most should consider hiring when they can afford it: an editor for content and a virtual assistant, VA. For admin tasks, appointment setting, emails, calendar, find them on Upwork, Fiverr, places like that.
And scaling isn't just hiring, it's significantly about increasing volume, right? Especially content.
Exactly. Source references Alex Hormozy's example. His business opportunities and sales jumped dramatically when he increased content posting from 40 to 80 pieces a week. Higher volume, if the content's good, leads to significantly higher chances of visibility, engagement, sales, opportunities.
You also need to be proactive in creating your own opportunities, not just wait for them.
This means actively pursuing things, organizing charity events for PR, doing street interviews for content and visibility, actively reaching out to relevant podcasts, maybe with a pro pitch deck sent by your VA, seeking speaking gigs, pursuing collaborations.
And offering free services or products initially. It seems counterintuitive if the goal is money.
Smart, strategic move for early growth, they say. Offer free services, products to quickly gather testimonials, build social proof. Absolutely crucial for attracting your next round paying customers.
Ah, okay.
They use their own editor as an example. He initially offered free editing, which led to paid work once they saw his value.
So it's a way to offer to work for free, to build credibility, social proof, get your foot in the door.
Yes. They also recommend using a visual sales dashboard. Set targets, track key metrics, see progress clearly. Book recommendations for scaling, The Ultimate Jim Rohn Library for Business Philosophy, and Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson for inspiration on building large ventures.
Before we wrap up, the source dedicates a brief moment to explicitly reinforce one critical point. It's come up repeatedly.
Asking for help.
Simple, yeah, but clearly non-negotiable. There is absolutely no shame in asking for help.
And they reiterate why it's so important.
Yeah.
Your network, your community, they're the vital place to turn when you don't have the answers. hit difficult times, feel overwhelmed or discouraged.
And connecting back to that fear of others wanting you to fail, they say getting help from the right people is key. Overcome obstacles, prove naysayers wrong, and crucially, relight your own fire when you're struggling.
Exactly. Joining a mastermind, a supportive community, provides that essential safety net, external perspective. And it's noteworthy, those books, The Decision by Kevin Hart, You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, mentioned again here, underscores their relevance not just to initial mindset, but ongoing resilience needed to push through.
We have covered a remarkable amount of ground in this deep dive, and the sources themselves would say if you've stayed with us this long absorbing all this, that demonstrates a certain commitment, ability to process complex ideas, key traits needed for entrepreneurship, they reckon.
They pose the core question directly to you, the listener, at the end. Do you think you are cut out for entrepreneurship?
And they summarize what the sources say it genuinely takes: a big, meaningful why. Understanding the consequence if you don't try. Discipline, real sacrifices, deep self-belief, patience, long game. Working tirelessly, living frugally for a period, self-education commitment, wearing many hats yourself, taking consistent action, being okay with failure and rejection, having the grit to push through when you question everything and things get hard.
The source suggests two likely outcomes after honestly considering all this. Either it sounds like just too much of a headache, or you feel that internal bring it on attitude, a sense of excitement about the challenge.
And they end this evaluation on a hopeful, powerful note. If the challenge, despite everything, sounds exciting to you, they believe you are likely cut out for it. And they reiterate, while the beginning is a tough grind, it does get better. You work smarter, you gain true autonomy, control over your life, and you can earn really, really good money when you build something sustainable that provides value. That, they say, is the destination that makes the initial journey worthwhile.
It's the payoff
Yeah.
for embracing the grind, making the necessary changes.
So to summarize the key takeaways from these sources, we've covered the reality of the grind, not easy money. It's hard work, sacrifice, but possible for anyone willing to commit. We've talked about the essential mindset shift from employee thinking to employer ownership and the critical, sometimes uncomfortable role of your environment and social circle. We've explored choosing and validating your model, start with strengths, active research, reverse engineering, testing in the real market with sales.
We've highlighted the vital, non-negotiable importance of disciplined financial prep before the leap, living frugally, like a POA, diligently building those 4 essential funds for a runway. We've discussed why a visible personal brand is non-negotiable today. Build trust, drive traffic, create opportunities.
We've gone through practical strategies for navigating building while working, provocative workplace tips, importance of not trusting coworkers with plans. We've covered managing limited time, smart planning, ROTI, time blocking, productivity tips, less doom scrolling, productivity bubble, prioritizing creation over consumption.
The power of your network was highlighted growth conversations, cutting negative influences. We touched on leveraging automation and strategic outsourcing to scale efficiently. And finally, reiterated the simple but critical act of asking for help.
The core message, loud and clear from these sources. Escaping the 9-to-5 for an online business on your terms is possible for anyone, regardless of background, but requires immense dedication, relentless resilience, strategic action, sacrifices, and a profound willingness to change yourself and your environment. It's framed as a marathon, not a sprint. Patience through the grind is absolutely key.
And just to reiterate, that tutorial source specifically mentioned offering free, valuable resources like a detailed white paper blueprint, a practical banking structure guide to help you. They provide instructions within their content on how to access these. We encourage you, if you're serious, seek out those resources as shared in the original material for deeper practical guidance.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider, building on everything we've unpacked. If building a life entirely by your own design freedom, autonomy requires living like a POA for a couple of years, working tirelessly, making sacrifices, facing constant challenges, uncertainty. But the alternative for many is potentially being unhappy in a job for 40+ years, needing permission for every day off, always being replaceable in a system you don't control. Which path is truly the riskier one in the long run?
It really raises an important question for anyone listening, doesn't it? What are you willing to sacrifice now for the freedom you desire later?